Hey everyone, Kelly Dean Allen here with you again. Well, it's quick riff time again, short, rather to the point guitar tutorials on how to play some of the greatest riffs in rock and roll history. Today we're going to have a look at one of the best and most famous guitar riffs of all time, and the bane of every beginner guitarist out there whose fingers just don't move the way they want them to, or for that matter, as fast as they would like them to. Of course, I speak of the opening riff to Spirit of Radio by Lifeson and Rush. Now then, there's flanger all over the guitar tone of this riff, so if you've got yourself a flanger pedal, kick it on and play with those knobs till you got something that sounds close, yeah? That's it. Let's close in here a little bit and get started. Alright then, Rush and Spirit of Radio from Permanent Waves. We are in standard tuning for this tutorial, and if you've never heard this guitar riff before, and I doubt that very much, it goes a little something like this. Over and over and over and over again. At its core, very simple. We're dealing with the open B, open high E, these four notes. Second fret of the high E, third fret of the B, fifth fret of the high E, fourth fret of the high E. And we're starting here with our index on the second fret of the high E. Just going to pull that off to open E. I'm picking every one of these on the downstroke. Then you're going to take your middle finger, drop it on the 3 of the B, and pull that off to open B. Right? Then take your pinky, move it up here to 5 of the high E, pull that off to open. And then back to the 3 of the B, and pull that off to open. That's the first half of the riff. Right? Second half of the riff starts the exact same way, with a pull off from 2 off to open of the high E, 3 off to open of the B, but finishes a little bit differently with this. With a very quick little double pull off from 4 to 2 to open of the high E, drop back onto that 3 of the B, pull it back off to open, and that's the second half of the riff. I'm putting it all together nice and slow. Is that right there. Now the problem with this riff for like the beginner guitarist or early intermediate guitarist is the speed, obviously, but the dexterity of being able to play it at speed, and also not with all these pull-offs, not like banging into other strings while you're doing it, right? But it's a very, very slick little riff, and at speed it's very, very cool. Right? And that leads into this. So what kickstarts that little riff progression that we're playing there is this. Sliding into 4 of the D off to 2 of the D, and then dropping onto 5 of the A with your pinky, 4, 5, 4, 2. Right? That's the way I like to play it. You can play it this D note here that I'm grabbing with my pinky. You can hit the open D if you like, and play it like that, right? I like to play it like this. Exact same notes, and that drops right into an E power chord and the next progression that we're going to be playing before the first verse. That right there. So we're going to hit this E power chord twice, a little down up. Then you're going to go 2, 3, 4 of the low E right into an A power chord that you're also going to hit with a little down up. Then you're going to drop right onto the second fret of the A, little pause, and then you're going to drop onto 3 and hammer onto 4. And then finish on the 2 of the D string, and then repeat. Right, repeated 4 times. And that finishes again with another E power chord, right? And then we're going to drop into this B major shape here at the 7th fret position, but it's not going to be a full B major bar chord. We're going to keep the top 2 strings open. And we're just going to strum all 6 strings, right, coming off that E power chord. Kind of like that, right? right? And then you're going to take your ring finger, which is on the 9 of the D, or 9 of the A string, sorry, and then we're going to move it up to 9 of the low E, slide out of it into this chord. And we're going to downstroke this chord about 7 times, right? Now this chord is basically just an augmented way of playing an E major chord. Every one of these notes are out of the E major chord. So we're using the major third here as our root note on the 4 of the low E. And then we're barring the 2s of the A and the D string. We have our pinky down here on the 4 of the G, right? It's an E major chord. It's basically just a different way of playing an E major chord, and you have this third interval in the root, right, in the bass. And you're just going to downstroke that like 7 or 8 times, right? Then you're going to drop into a 3-finger A power chord, strum that like about 8 times. Move it into B, right? And then we're into the first verse with an E major. So you're going to hit this E major twice on the downstroke and then catch the top 2 strings on the upstroke. Right back into B and do the exact same thing with the open strings. Hit it twice on the downstroke, catch the top 2 strings on the upstroke. Now we're going to drop off to G sharp, a 3-finger G sharp power chord. When we start strumming this chord later, it's actually a G sharp minor chord, but at this point in time we're just going to hit a 3-finger G power chord because we're not touching upon the G string. And we're still hitting those open strings, right? But we're going to slide out to that from this 9 again, right? From this B major. But now we're going to do it with our index, not our ring finger, because we're not sliding out to this chord, this augmented E major chord. We're sliding into a G sharp, right? So kind of like this. And then back into A. We're going to take that A, hit it a couple of times, slide it into a C sharp power chord back to B, and then the vocals come in for the first verse, right? Right back to E again. Back to B. And in the middle of the verse, we're not going to do that slide into C sharp back to B. We're just going to hit that A a couple of times, into B a couple of times, and then repeat, right? Kind of like that, right? And at the end of the first verse, we are going to do that little slide into C sharp back to B. And then we drop into the next verse. And we're playing the same progression, but now we're using full bar chords. Right? So when we drop into B at this point, we're into a full B major bar chord. And when we catch the top 2 strings on the upstroke, we're catching those notes, right? Instead of the open strings. And now when we go off to this G sharp, we're into a G sharp minor. And then A into B, back to E. And at the end of the second verse, when we go off to that G sharp the final time, we're just going to go bum, 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 just downstroke it like 8 times. Move it into A 4 or 5 times, right? Off to E, let it ring, drop back into the main riff for the chorus. Right? Let's stop there because that's well beyond what I wanted to look at. I just wanted to look at the opening riff to this one, but I just kind of kept on going all throughout the first verse and the chorus, and that just leads into another verse chorus, which is about 2/3 of the song. So there you go. That's how you play the first 2/3 of Spirit of Radio by Rush. Certainly hope you enjoyed that, found it helpful. If you did, please hit that like button right down there. Maybe drop me a subscribe if you haven't done that already, as that would be very kind. Hope you're well out there. We will see you next time, yeah? Cheers.